Welcome to the Lifeline, a production of Simply BJE. The goal of this podcast is to build, inspire, and to empower our listeners through conversations on business, leadership, and mental health. We invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at www.simplybje.com/The Lifeline. Now, let's tune in for today's episode. Top of the day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Lifeline. We're your host, life coach, and motivational speaker, Bo Powell, social media advocate and owner of the For Real brand, Lindsberg Petway, and yours truly, leadership coach and mental health advocate, Barry J. Elliott. You can visit us at www.simplybje.com/The Lifeline and on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. Today, we have Dr. Rayvann, a licensed clinical therapist who has his own practice, while also providing mental health consultation to churches, as well as being an ordained minister, and also providing consultation to different corporations. And once again, we have special guest author, entrepreneur, singer, business owner, preacher, Jeremy Grimes, all the way from North Augusta, South Carolina, or as Bo would say, South Kakalaki. Good morning, gentlemen. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good stuff.
Welcome.
So I think this is an important conversation. We talked about this after the show last week, but we don't really see a lot of male caregivers. And we know that men process information differently. They process their emotions differently. And so before we really dive into that part of our conversation, Dr. Key, I want to ask you just very generally, talk to us a little bit about the importance of self-care generally, or generally speaking.
Yeah, so I liken self-care to what we who own cars do to keep a car in good condition. So there has to be some consistent maintenance. There has to be a time where the car has to rest. There has to be a time where it needs to be checked out. It needs to be tended to. And that's what I see self-care as. I think we have to realize as human beings that we're not superheroes, and it's not until we acknowledge our humanity that we will engage in self-care. So yeah, self-care is taking care of you, in a way that's going to allow you to function optimally.
That's good. So let me ask this question. I'm going to start with Bo, and then I'm going to ask P, and then Reverend Grimes. On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate your self-care?
Scale of 1 to 10. Well, I've learned, Dr. Key, that I am human. I had to learn that. I think as men, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to show up and perform. And sometimes it takes really, really tough circumstances for us to realize and recognize for humanity. So I would say at this stage of the game, in short, my self-care would probably be around a 7.
That's fair.
Yeah, a year ago, I probably would have said maybe, or 2 years ago, a couple of years ago, maybe around a 3 or 4.
Wow.
But, just through situations and circumstances, I've realized how important it is to take care of myself. So I'll say about a 6 or a 7 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I would say a 5. Really, I'm getting better at it, but with the demand that never stops. And Jeremy said something last week that each day is a new challenge. So you don't know what you're getting. So I've gotten better. I think my consistency with the gym is one thing, stretching, that type of self-care, but taking it to the next level as far as rest, massages, just debriefing the mind. I could do better at those things. So I'll say probably a 5.
Okay. JT.
Well, yeah, I got great numbers. I would say now at this stage about a 3 or 4. I'm learning. I'm not a person to say I've mastered much, but I am learning to start doing certain things. So that's why I would say 3, possible 4. Yeah, that's where I would stay at with my numbers. So let me add this too, Barry.
Oh, please.
I was just thinking because one of the things I've learned, I used to think self-care was, obviously gym, stuff like that is important. That's a regular part of my regimen. But I also had to learn that self-care was being able to say no.
Mm,
That everything wasn't a fire that needed to be put out.
that's good.
Um, so I've had to learn that, to be able to say no and to take care of myself, because for a while I would just allow myself to be pulled in every different direction as if everything was a fire, like just immediately it was urgent all the time. And it really wasn't. It was just how I thought about it. And so I think that's one of the things that, when I was listening as Lindbergh started to talk about, massage. I don't do a lot of massages and stuff like I probably should or want to, but I think the biggest thing for me is just being able to say no when people would call upon me, even though it's not an emergency.
Yeah,
So I think that's played a big key for me too.
that's
And to
big.
expound upon that, I
Yeah.
was thinking now that I'm 52, going on 53,
Dang.
I have I have learned to the fact that humans will be humans, adults will be adults,
Yeah.
and you have to assess the situation so you don't overextend yourself, as
Yeah,
Bo alluded to. No being a word that can be used. Um, as men, we like to fix everything. I am uniquely the youngest of four girls. Father died when I was two. So my perspective of being a man has been there for a long time. And taking care of my mom, which is a whole nother level of responsibility, making sure everything is done and then taking care of family. One of the things I had to learn, even with my sons and the demand that I used to put on them, so I just kind of like, okay, I'm not going to try to do everything. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. That's out of place. Just let it be out of place. Not worrying myself, trying to make sure that everything is perfect. So that was
that's
one of the
good.
things that I've grown to, as I matured in age, to just say, okay, it is what it is. He's an adult. That person's an adult. They're going to do that. They're going to believe that. So be it. I don't have to agree with it or do it, as both said. Using the word no, not just knowing no, but using no.
Yeah.
Dr. Key over there
That's really
percolating. I know you want to
important.
say something. You're over
Yeah,
there
I was
percolating.
the many times I've had to tell people just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you have to or that you should do something. And being able to say no, I mean, that's that part of you taking care of you and thinking about you and caring about you, setting that boundary, and you don't have to explain your no. Some people feel like they've got to explain why they can't do it or why they don't want to do it or why they're not going to do it. No, it's your no, it's your decision. You know yourself best, you know your limits, and you have to take that into consideration. And like uh Lindbergh said, uh people are going to be people. People will always pull on you, especially if they know you're going to say yes. You're the type of person that's going to say yes. They're going to pull. People are resourceful. They're going to pull from where they know they're going to get what they need or what they want. So if you're that type of person that supplies needs all the time, expect people to come to you all the time. You know, but you have to be able to say no, and helping people to understand that you do have a no, helps to build their frustration tolerance, and they understand further, I mean, along the down the line, they understand more and more easily, when you say no, they can handle it, they can process that, and they can accept it.
Yeah.
And
Someone
I
said,
used to have gift. I used to have guilt when I said no.
yeah,
Yeah.
After I said it or shut it down internally, like
It's a battle.
Mhm.
I could have, I should have. But even with my wife, I mean, and that's a real statement, because how you start, they say how you start is how you finish.
mhm,
But if somebody's always expecting you to do something and there is no, I wouldn't say appreciation, or just, oh, I knew you would do it. Why? Because you always do. Well, I didn't feel like it. Why not?
mhm.
You always do it, and just not having that guilt internally. I had to grow to that process too.
Wow. I heard someone
That's
say
very
recently,
important.
and they said to me, you have to teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And telling them no is one of the ways you do that.
Right.
Mhm.
JT, you gonna say something?
Something hit me earlier, and what hit me was self-care is also the ability to study your own patterns.
Mm,
Good.
The Lord spoke to me one day, and He said, "Patterns prophesy." we don't always have to look for someone to give a prophetic word. The pattern of a person will tell you what the next result will be. Patterns prophesy future because pattern is a rhythm and it's a mode of operation. And so what I've had to learn and what I'm learning to do now is to study my own patterns. How does Jeremy respond when this happens? What makes Jeremy tick? Um, what causes Jeremy to say yes outside when he's saying no? Why did you say yes, and why did you agree to that after the yes was given? So learning to study my own patterns and how I respond to things, my approach to things, is helping me even when I want to say yes, but I'm learning to say no
Mm.
and not feel guilty about it. Because guilt is a real thing that people like me face.
Yeah.
I battle that, and also the impending confrontation that comes from your no, or the impending, they won't see me how they used to see me or view me the same way they used to view me if I give that no. And so your no is your savior.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I believe that there's another anointing, and you break the word anointing down. No, team anointing. We need to be anointed for the no.
Wow, wow. But one of my professors from seminary, he was a clinical psychologist, a clinical therapist, and he said that people pleasing is a trauma response. And so sometimes when you feel like you can't say no, there is embedded in you this need to please, and that is the result of trauma of some sort. Talk to me, Dr. Key.
Yeah, I mean, if you are fearing that your no is going to lead to some type of abandonment and you have abandonment issues, definitely you're going to say yes because you don't want that person to be done with you or leave you or be mad at you. You know, there's so many things that people do because they just don't want like I was getting ready to saw you call you Pastor Grimes. um JT said just the impending confrontation. Some people don't like that. Some people don't want that. They're non-confrontational. They don't want you to be upset about anything and they don't want to be the root of that. So they'll say yes so that you'll like them. They'll say yes so that you'll stay. They'll say yes so that if they need something in the future, they feel like, you owe it to them. So trauma is wrapped up all in that. Absolutely.
Wow, wow. So I'm gonna start with JT. Tell me what have been your biggest challenges to self-care as a caregiver, as you provide care to your parents, because I think JT's situation is different and that are unique in that he is caring for both his mother and father simultaneously. So, what have been your biggest challenges providing care for yourself while you perform as a caregiver?
Um, I think one of my biggest challenges among many, I think I got a list of them. One of the main challenges is um, not knowing me enough to know how to love me enough to handle me properly while handling
Um,
them. I can show up. I have the ability to show up tired, exhausted, and all. I have the ability, I don't know, God graced me for that for some reason, but when it's time to perform, there's a grace for that. But being an extroverted introvert, a lot of times I can show up for people and do well, but then after that moment of ministry performance, everything is over. There's a level of exhaustion that I face privately where I had to learn what recharging my battery was. I had to learn how do I need to recharge my battery, learning what my temperament is, So by temperament, I'm a melancholy. Melancholies are thinkers, but also melancholies enjoy their own space. And so I've had to learn to give myself that. Even though I don't do it enough, I had to learn, this is what recharges my battery. So I need to do this for me. And just studying your own patterns, that's why I have to go back to that because If you don't know enough about yourself internally and deeply on a deeper level beyond the surface level, you will not know how to feed yourself what you need, because every person has to be fed differently. And we're not always fed externally. We have to feed ourselves what we need. And so I've been learning how to do that. Um, and a statement hit me right before the broadcast, and I gotta release that to write this down. But the statement hit me that your compassion can sign you up for what your identity cannot sustain. If your identity is not solidified, if you don't really know who you are and have studied who you are enough to know what you need to feed you, then you will give a yes, and you will constantly give a yes, and you will always be on go and performing and doing. But you won't have the ability to sustain that internally, so you can crumble inside while showing up for everybody else. And what I've also learned, not to take up too much time, is people really don't see you. One of the greatest testimonies from one caregiver to another is the fact that, hey, I see you. I see you. And that seeing a person is knowing a person in spirit well enough to know that you're not by yourself. I appreciate your yes. I value you enough to honor your time, honor your commitment, and honor you as a person by helping to meet your needs as best as possible. So I would say that that was one of my greatest challenges in caregiving, was even not about them. It was about me learning me, about me falling in love with me again, without me loving me enough to not have to perform for me to feel fulfilled in life. Who are you outside of caregiving? Who are you outside of the last thing you've done for a person? And if you can't answer these questions, then you will be on a rat race, on a cycle of performing and doing, and you are now becoming a human doing versus a human being.
Mic drop.
Good.
That's good. Yeah.
Bo, Lindsberg, I know y'all percolating over there too. I know y'all see y'all sweat glands popping.
I think the biggest challenge is time. I think that's the biggest challenge, time to fit it in. I was once told in college, you make time for what you want to. So if I really wanted to, I guess I can make the time for it. I think the other challenge is the way I'm built, the way I'm wired, the way I was raised, my dynamic of being a doer, my dynamic of being the man of the house, the dynamic of being a person who likes to make sure everyone else is taken care of. Um, if I have an event, hypothetically at my house, for example, I'm gonna make sure everyone has what they want, what they need. If it's a different item on the menu, that's just an example. But how I'm wired, just to make sure that everything is taken care of, um, that's pretty much the biggest challenge. Is me, me being me. And as Jeremy said, understanding your pattern and releasing yourself. You know, when you think about releasing something, you just let it go, and just being able to let go and just like, today, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to relax. I'm going to chill, debrief. If someone needs me, turn my phone off. But that's not me, especially being an entrepreneur. So every time the phone rings, it's an opportunity. And, ABC, we always be closing. So with those opportunities, it just carries over to who I am. So I'll say time and the way I'm wired are the two biggest challenges.
Yeah, resonates with me, both what JT and Lindbergh was talking about. For me, it's just has been just doing the internal work. Um, and being able to, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, who was aware of, how things were going when taking care of my mom and stuff last year, and the stress and stuff that was associated with that. And then she asked me, she says, how are you doing? Or not, basically, I was like, I ain't doing nothing. She said, oh, you're doing something, you're resting. And I realized that that is doing something, just to rest and take care of myself. And I think for me, in the midst of all this, I've had to learn a lot about myself too, my patterns. I think I talked about last show, just a lot of things I had learned and I had gotten out of this time of having to take care of mom, was just learning more about myself and how to better care for myself. And in the list of all the priorities from business, from family, stuff like that, to make myself a priority as well and to be okay with that. Um, I think for a while it was like I don't know if I felt like I deserved that. Because sometimes as men, we feel like if we're not performing, if we're not, showing up like we need to, we don't deserve rest. You don't deserve that reward, if you will. And so just saying, look, my care has nothing to do with how I perform. Did you do your best in that moment? And you need that time to rest and recharge so you can show up better, first and foremost for you. And so there's a lot of things that I've always known to do, but I hadn't known how to execute for myself. And just learning that the importance of being able to keep my cup full enough so I can have what's necessary to give in the most important moments. And I think, just as we were talking about, one of the cliches that came to mind, it says a lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. So just because you
Yeah,
didn't plan well doesn't mean that it's up to me to accommodate or to bridge that gap for you. That I really have the choice to whether I want to do that or not. There are some situations where they are urgent, they are dire, and you show up for those. But then there are situations that are not necessarily dire, and it's not necessarily my responsibility to do that. And it's up to me to choose to do that. And so I think one of the things I've had to learn is that I have a choice,
yeah,
that I do have a choice, and that in that choice, I need to make sure that there are times that I choose me, so I can, be okay. So I don't lose my mind or, I don't over stress myself out or I'm, put myself in bad situations where I'm not taking care of myself the way I need to be. So I can, be the best I can in every given moment. So, that challenge has, I can really relate to what JT was saying. It was just really knowing myself and learning myself. I know I don't look it, but I'm 50, be 51 this year, and so I just, I think this past year I had to learn learn a lot about who I was, and I was like, wow, I've been here all this time, and I didn't even know that about myself, or that I could even do that.
yeah,
Um, and that it was okay, and that even if it wasn't okay for somebody else, that as long as it's okay with me, then
Mhm.
that's okay.
yeah. That's good. That's good. Dr. Key, even though you're not to the level that they are in their caregiving, you are caregiver. You don't talk about it much, but the truth is you are a caregiver because you pretty much take care of your mom and your brother. So tell me, how does a caregiver talk to us, I should say, a little bit about how a caregiver, as Bo said, chooses themselves.
I think the main thing is that we have to really revisit and understand expectations. I think expectations play a big part in it. If you have expectations of your own or you've adopted the expectations of others for yourself, you've got to know whose expectations you're going to go with.
Mhm.
And those expectations have to be realistic expectations. A lot of times we create expectations that are unrealistic, and if it's unrealistic, you're going to push yourself beyond where you need to go. So one of the things I tell people is, what are you expecting of yourself? And that might even require you to redefine some words for yourself. When you're caregiving, especially for parents, it's all about, am I a good son? Am I a good son? I'm trying to be the best son. I want people to see me as a good son. Well, how are you defining the word good? Because good might mean you finding somebody who can actually do the job, and you making that connection and you supporting them that way. It might not be you actually doing the physical work. It might be you finding the connection of someone who can do the work, and that still makes you a good son. Just because you're not the hands-on person doesn't mean you're not good or that you're bad or that you're disrespectful or ungrateful. But we have all of these definitions swimming in our head from how we've grown up in life, or how maybe good our parents were to us, and we feel obligated and we create an expectation to try to meet an obligation that we don't necessarily have to meet. So checking your expectations are super important. Checking your expectations are super important, and redefining what you need to redefine to, make sure that the definition of good and success and bad and disrespectful all fit, for your situation.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's good because that's one of the things that I've had to just recently, in taking care of my mom. It's like, I've been able to do this, but I can't necessarily, like what you were saying, JT, I can't sustain this long term, you
Right.
know? And so it doesn't have to be me, but can I find someone to show up, hire someone to show up for my mom, which now that is more in my purview, I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, can I just provide the resources for that care to be provided for?
Hmm.
And that's just as good. It doesn't necessarily have to be my hands. I can work through someone else to give the best care.
Hmm.
Because if that's their job to do that, then they're not pulled in so many different directions. They're not necessarily conflicted like I am. And
Mhm.
so it took me a little bit, but I've said, you know what, that's just as good as, if not better, than me having to show up because, you know, one of the things I noticed that even caring for my mom, sometimes she can see the stress I was under.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she could feel that and sense that as much as I tried to hide it, she could sense that, and that was hurting her
Hmm.
because
Mhm.
she knew it was impacting me. And so I was like, so after a while, once things got settled, that was something that I said, look, we got to look into, getting some people to come in here that this is their job. And they can show up in a way that, that's going to be less conflicted, because that's what they're here to do. And
Hmm.
they may
Mhm.
hope, you find someone that takes joy in that. So, that I appreciate you bringing that up because that was something I had to learn and realize that it doesn't have to be me, and I had to make some adjustments in how I looked at myself and who was supposed to be responsible for that. And responsibility looks different. I can be responsible, or me and my sisters can be responsible in taking care of our mom, but it doesn't necessarily have to be us who's doing it.
Right.
Right.
And that reduces and frees you from guilt and
Yeah.
frees mom from feeling guilt too, because
Yeah.
sometimes the person being cared for feels guilty because of
Hmm.
stress. So if you want to eliminate that guilt on their end and on your end, sometimes it's just a matter of finding the help that you need, and that's being just as helpful,
Yeah.
sometimes even
Mhm.
better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to a point where it was it was wearing me out mentally. And I shared with Barry in private kind of what I was going through. And it got to the point where my mom was every time I would come in, I know you're tired. I know you're
Hmm.
tired. I know
Yeah.
it's a lot. I
Mm.
know I'm a lot. And I said, no, Mom, it's not. But then it would wear on me and she would see it and I would try to hide it, but she knew I'm her child. Um, but like you said, finding someone to be able to give the care is just as good as giving the care because, I got to the point with the second round of my mom being sick and her just laying in the bed. I said, I know I can't do this. So, yeah, absolutely right.
Mhm.
If if it's okay, I want to briefly, if we can, go back to rest just for a minute. Because rest is like a construct that people think you laying in the bed, turning your phone off, not doing anything, which is it is a component of rest. But I would like to pose a thought that anybody can jump in on about the art of real rest, because for a thinker like me, I don't know how to turn my brain off. I don't know how to turn, because when you're an entrepreneur, it's different when you got a 9 to 5. You got vacation time built up, you got leave time, you got this, but for the person that's wired like this, if I don't get out of bed, it doesn't get done. If I don't show up, it doesn't happen. For a person that's wired like that, what is real rest? Because I know that if you interviewed the people closest to me, they would say, Jay don't rest. He may sleep, but Jay don't rest. And so for that art of self-care, how does a person wired that way really truly rest and recharge?
Well, I'd have a business answer to that. You got to learn how to delegate if possible. You can't have you be the only one to do it because if something happens to you, it all disappears. It's all done. You know,
Right.
so you got to learn how to trust people. You've got to learn how to connect with people, and you got to learn how to delegate responsibility. It's the only way
Right.
you be able to get it done and be able to rest. You know, like you said, your mind is not going to be able to cut off at night if you know you're the only one that can do something that needs to be done. Somebody else has got to be able to do it too. So you got to focus on training. You got to focus on, I don't want to say replicating yourself, but in essence, yeah, you got to learn how to create another version of you that can do when you're not able to do.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, JT, find your pattern. I know if I don't get up, it doesn't happen in so many different aspects. However, I find spots to rest, find spots to take a nap, find spots to just turn it off, stop thinking. It is hard to think. It is hard to stop thinking when you're entrepreneurial. I'm writing a book, I'm doing this, but you have to literally on purpose just if it's just 10 minutes, if it's just 15 minutes. But that's what I do. I kind of find spots where I can just, you know, turn it off. And that helps. That's the pattern that I learned. It works for me, until I get a vacation, until I get the time. But today I'm busy until 5:30, and today's my off day. So I'm gonna have to find a spot in between just to rest.
Let me say, I'm not a caregiver like you guys, but let me say this. I think one of the things that's good for me is to connect with people who don't need me. So if you always surround yourself with people who are always pulling on you, that becomes a good way to drain your battery. So you have to connect yourself with people who don't need you, but feed you. And so I think this is something, so like there are times when Bo, Petway, and myself, we don't necessarily have business discuss, but we connect because we feed one another. So I think that's imperative.
Yeah, it is.
There too. And yeah, I think you hit something on the nose, Barry, because when you start thinking about caregiving, the word that pops in my head is just demands. There's always the demand. If you got businesses, there's always something to do. And so just finding time where there's no demands is rest. You know, I don't, for me, it's rest. Sometimes that could be me going to the movies at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. That gives me an opportunity to just relax. Nobody's asking me to do anything. The phone's off or whatever. And I've carved out that time. I've had to make adjustments in my business schedule. And I've just had to learn to, in that regard too, is just to trust God, for the things that I can't do because he neither sleeps nor slumbers. So if I believe that he's working on my behalf, then I can trust that with the efforts that I put in, I'm going to find favor. He's going to bring the clients. He's shown that and proven himself in that. I've had to learn that just this past year too, is that God, I'm in partnership with him. And as long as I'm operating in purpose and things of that nature, then he's going to cover those gaps that I can't feel at times. So I've got to trust that he's going to take care of me,
Mhm.
and he's going to provide for me. And I've had to learn that. I haven't always believed that, to be quite frank with you. I think I shared last time that last year was a process of God taking me from faith to trust. And I'm still in that process, learning to really trust him. Um, so for me, I've had to learn the discipline or the skill of just shutting things down, you know, blocking out times in my schedule where I'm not available for clients, or, I don't necessarily respond to that text immediately or that phone call immediately, you know, giving myself a 24-hour response time, you know. So for me, it's just learning to place, and Dr. Key, you can attest that. I'm pretty sure you probably talk about boundaries all the time when you talk about people. Is learning how to create proper boundaries for me to live in so I can find rest. And so, like you're saying, JT, it's not always about necessarily not doing anything, or it's not necessarily just laying in the bed or being lazy. Sometimes it's just doing things that bring you joy. That could be some retail therapy. I might go and go
Mhm.
buy me something, just
Yeah.
for me, or take a trip, or, just take a day off or something where I just do things solely just for me. Because for caregiving, we're so used to just, or if you're in business, you're always used to doing things for other people
Right.
that
Yeah.
sometimes we don't do anything for ourselves, like literally nothing,
Demands.
because we're just always giving, 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 giving. So for rest could be just the absence of having to give out. I'm resting
Hmm.
from giving out today.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that today.
Yeah.
That's rest. Doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. I'm just not doing anything for you right now. I'm
Right.
not doing anything for that right now. So that's something that I've really had to, I'm coming to learn, I should say. I'm mastering this, and it's a work in progress.
Well,
And
can I
I
say
don't know if
something?
I'll
I'm
get to
sorry.
3 or whatever the case may be, but that's what I think about when I start thinking about rest. Yes, sir.
You said something. You said resting is making decision to stop doing something. And when you really think about fasting, fasting is really giving your organs a rest. It's giving your digestive system a rest. And
Hmm.
so when you think about some people you need to fast from in order to get rest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have a choice when it's your wife and your kids and your mama.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know I've done some coaching with men and stuff like that, and I think a lot of times, we tend to not do things that feed us. I talk to a lot of guys, they don't do their hobbies anymore. They don't go golfing. They don't hang out with the fellas or anything. So we tend to lose ourselves in the care of other people. And what really attracted, them to us in the first place is because we were fully who we were.
Hmm.
But then for some reason we stopped doing the things that made us who we are. You know, we don't, I was remember I can recall one recently. He didn't work out anymore. He didn't hang out with his friends. He didn't golf anymore. He wasn't doing anything. Everything was all about her. And he thought it was a good thing, but it was wearing her out. It was too much pressure because she was the center of his world. So, you know, although when we make those decisions to kind of pull back and port ourselves, initially people may seem like, they feel some kind of way because they just kind of bought into that habit as well. After a while, they tend to respect that because I've had to learn that the people who really love and care for you, they're going to respect those boundaries,
Hmm.
you know, because what boundaries say, when you have boundaries for a relationship, it tells people how important the relationship is.
Hmm.
God has boundaries with us, but he creates those boundaries because the relationship with us is important to him. So it's the same thing for us and other people. We create those. I have this boundary that I have in place because I value the relationship. So I'm letting you know what this boundary is because I want to stay in relationship with you. And I'm just being honest about who I am. But we need to take that step back from our kids, from our spouses, from church, ministry, whatever the case may be. We have to take a step back to take care of ourselves. And the people who love and care about us, yeah, they may be a little rubbish, always here and stuff like that. But when you come back and you're fully into yourself, they're gonna appreciate that. And they're like, man, when you leaving? You ain't gonna hang out. You ain't gonna hang out with because they realize how much it empowers you and how much better you are when you show back up.
Right.
So I've had to learn that, and I'm learning that too.
Yeah.
So, so I guess that kind of closes us out. But before we end the podcast, Dr. Key, please let our listeners know how they can connect with you. If you have a website, your social media handles, how they can take advantage of your services. Please let us know. Let them know how to do that. And also, you too, JT, your guest. Please revisit how people can connect with you, how they can take advantage of your services, some offerings that you may have, so our listeners can connect with you guys.
Yeah. So my social media handles on Instagram is Rayvann Key, the number two. My first name, last name, all together, the number two. And you can email me at Dr. Ray 14 at gmail.com. If you want to connect and talk about sessions or therapy or anything like that, or if you have any questions, I'm free to answer those questions within limits.
And
Because I'm,
Dr.
go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have a particular service area? I know you're based in where you're based at, but do
I'm
you,
virtual, so
okay.
I'm virtual, so it doesn't matter where you might be. If you need to see me in person, I'm in Philadelphia. So, uh, but I'm doing everything virtually right now. So you can access me wherever you are.
Sweet.
Mhm.
JT?
Yes, sir. Jeremy T. Grimes on Facebook is my Facebook handle. I got a few different Facebook pages. JT Grimes Ministries for the ministry component. JT Cuts for the barbering component, and Champion Cleaners for the cleaning side for that component. You can reach me there, even on IG as well with JT Cuts and also Champion Cleaners as well. I think that that's probably the most efficient way to reach me at this time. Um, and and I am proud author of my first book, Emancipated from Yesterday, which can also be purchased from Amazon, or I have a direct link. If you are interested as well, you can reach out to me, inbox me through social media, and I can get that to you as well.
Awesome, awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on and being with us today for just an important topic. And we thank our listeners for listening in. So this concludes another episode of The Lifeline with your host, BJE, Lindsberg Petway, and Bo Powell. And don't forget to check us out at www.simplybje.com/The Lifeline and on social media. Look, we're on a mission. We want to bring light and life into your household, so join us. And let us hear your feedback, because it's all about bringing life to you on The Lifeline. Y'all take care.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with host, business expert, and life coach Bo Powell, social media influencer and entrepreneur Lindsberg Petway, and leadership coach and mental health advocate Barry J. Elliott. Join us next week for another impactful conversation on The Lifeline. God bless.